Hello, welcome to Mass 500 Disaster Recovery, More Than Just Tape Backups webinar. I am Scott Cameron. I'm the Director of Operations at Escape Velocity Systems. I began my career in high-tech enterprise systems in 1998 with Hewlett-Packard, later spending 7 years working for IBM in disaster recovery, professional services, and later managing operations within their managed hosting or e-business team. I joined EVS shortly after earning my master's degree at the University of Denver in 2007, and today I bring Fortune 500 process and operational experience to the small to mid-sized market space through my management of the EVS Professional Services and Operations Group. If you'd like more information beyond what you're going to learn today on the webinar, feel free to contact me at the information that's on the screen. I'd like to thank you for joining the webinar today, and I'm going to make a couple promises about today's presentation. One, I'm not going to use any bullet points, just a couple of numbered lists. And two, I realize that an abundance of information creates a deficit of attention, so I'm going to keep this focused so it applies to business risk and a business solution. My goal is to present this information in a meaningful way. During the webinar, there were actually interactive questions. This is a re-recording of the webinar, so I will be relaying to you the results of those during the live webinar. So today's discussion, I'm going to be covering four main topics. One, we're going to be defining disaster recovery. I'm going to dispel common misconceptions. We're going to be able to understand disaster recovery's relevance to your business. We will also discuss EVS's managed DR services. So let's begin. Late in the summer of 2001, I was working for IBM Global Services. I ran some of the large commercial outsourced accounts. Some of these services we provided included disaster recovery for the Fortune 500 business. I focused in the financial industry, companies such as JP Morgan Chase, Moody's, New York Stock Exchange, businesses that touched all of us in one way or another. On September 11th, 2001, almost all these businesses experienced a game-changing and systemic outage, which invoked the execution of numerous and extensive disaster recovery plans. Even the best plans with live mirrored environments experienced a certain amount of outage and significant costs in recoveries. Everyone here today represents the small, medium-sized businesses. The point of the story is that we don't have to have a 9/11 for our businesses to experience an outage of similar proportions. To keep things in perspective, a single server or site outage to your business may be more catastrophic than 9/11 was for certain Fortune 500 businesses. Many lessons were learned from that event, some of which would most likely put your company out of business. I'm here today to share those lessons and explain how you can avoid that result. Let me share some interesting facts with you. So 2% of data loss is due to natural disasters. So when folks hear disaster recovery, they think tornadoes, fires, you name it, earthquakes, but really that represents a very small amount. More than half of all data is lost because of hardware or computer systems failure. Another 9% of data loss is attributed to software corruption, and 26% is the result of human error. Now, I want you to think about this. Over a quarter is the result of human error. I'd like to give a couple examples, both from my Fortune 500 experience as well as small and medium business. So everyone probably will have heard of a company called Iron Mountain. It is a data retention company that hold tape drives, paper files, whatnot. Basically, a Fortune 500 company was maintaining their records off-site electronically with Iron Mountain. During a lawsuit, they needed to recover and to gain access to some of the electronic files from years past. There was a simple misunderstanding of the retention policy of these tapes. In other words, the company thought these tapes were being kept indefinitely, whereas the contract they had with Iron Mountain meant that they kept them only for 1 year. There was basically data loss, and this greatly influenced the outcome of the lawsuit. Another example is on the small and medium business size, one which you might be able to relate better to. IT was performing nightly database backups. They were even verifying the backups, and they were even doing some test restores every now and then. So they were doing a lot of the things right. One day, right before a new production line was starting, they experienced some data corruption, as we all do. No worries, right? IT will just restore the database. We'll be up and running. We'll be set. So when IT went to restore the data, what they discovered was all the data was wrong. They couldn't figure it out. Months and months of work had been lost. They later realized that IT was backing up the test environment, the test database, not the production database. So tens of thousands of hours and months was lost due to just this backing up the wrong database. So this loss also set back manufacturing several months, and even 14 months later, today, they're still suffering from the effects of an IT minor error. The next statistic on the slide you see is from the U.S. Department of Labor, and that estimates that 40% of businesses never reopen following a disaster. And of the remaining companies, at least 25 will close within 2 years. So what that tells you is businesses that do experience disaster, the odds are not very good for survival. On the slide now, on the screen now, there is a slide with the first question, and this was an interactive question, and that was question 1. And that was to estimate your business's per day cost of outage time. A question went out to the audience, and they all voted, and I'll get you those responses. So in this question, what would it cost, and do ask yourself, what would it cost per day to keep your business for outage time? So keep in mind that a $5 million business generates roughly $14,000 a day in revenue. So let's be realistic. Let's consider labor, missed sales, orders, production time, and time to bring the data back online. So of the choices, there were 3: $0 to $5,000, $5,000 to $15,000, or $15,000 or more. The results were the majority of the people in the call would cost more than $15,000 a day for outage time. The next interactive question was this: how long would it take for you to recover? So assume total data and hardware loss. Think procurement, the devices, rebuilding, licensing information, support, build-outs, restoring the hardware, finding the same tape drives to restore the backups, assuming you may have them, and assuming they're accurate, and the resources availability. So, think back to when you were building the environment to begin with. The options were 1 to 3 days, 2 is 3 to 5 days, and the third option was 7 or more days. Again, the results were the majority of the folks on the call, it would take more than 7 days to bring the environment back to recover it. So, as we define disaster recovery, it's basically staying in business. This is not just an IT objective, nor should it be just an IT budget. This is business continuity. Okay. So one of the other points that we kind of can come to is that disaster recovery, it's about the recovery time that closes business. It's not the ability to recover. So we all know that businesses, in one way or the other, can recover their data or can rebuild it, but it's the time it takes to do that that can shut someone down. Let's talk about a disaster recovery myth. The myth being a backup of your data solves a potential data loss problem. Well, this is false. And let me use a cheeseburger here as a metaphor to explain.